The rent went up again, and nobody sent you a memo explaining why. The eggs cost more this week than they did last week. The car you were about to buy, 3 years old, 30,000 miles, is somehow priced like it just rolled off the lot. Your paycheck is the same. Your landlord's mood is the same. But the number on everything keeps moving, and it never once asks your permission. You already know the shorthand for this. When a lot of people want something and there isn't much of it, the price climbs. When nobody wants it and there's a pile of it sitting around, the price falls. That part is obvious. You've felt it every time a concert sold out in 90 seconds or a store dumped last year's inventory into a clearance bin. That's the part everyone knows. What almost no one notices is that this isn't really a rule about things at all. It's a rule about people. Every price you have ever paid is the frozen result of an argument between total strangers, none of whom know your name, all of whom are quietly voting on what your money is worth. That argument has a name: supply and demand. Not the two lines from a textbook you half remember. The live mechanism that decides who gets what, at what cost, and who walks away with nothing. Understand it properly, and a price tag stops being a number you either accept or reject. It becomes a readout, a live count of how many people are standing between you and the thing you want, and how badly each of them needs the argument to end. By the time we're done here, you will not look at your own paycheck the same way again because you'll finally be able to see which side of that argument it's sitting on. Start with the clean version because you have to hold the simple shape in your head before you can watch reality bend it. Picture any single thing that gets bought and sold: coffee, apartments, an hour of someone's work. As the price of it climbs, two things happen at the same time, in opposite directions. The people who might have bought it start quietly dropping out. Too expensive, not worth it. They'll wait. They'll go without. They'll find something else. And at the very same moment, the people who might sell it lean in. More profit in it now, worth the effort. Let's make more. Let's dig more out of the ground. Push the price back down, and the whole thing flips. Buyers come flooding back, and sellers lose interest and wander off to do something more profitable. Somewhere in the middle of those two crowds moving against each other, there's a single price where the number of people willing to buy exactly matches the amount available to sell. Economists call it the clearing price because at that number, the market clears. Everyone who wants to trade at that price finds someone to trade with, and nothing's left stranded. That's the entire textbook model. Two crowds walking in opposite directions, meeting at one number. And here's the strange thing about that number. Nobody sets it. No committee votes on it. It's just where the pressure balances. Once you actually see that, once you look at a price as the resting point of two opposing forces rather than a fact somebody handed down, you can't switch that perception back off. Every price tag in the world turns into a snapshot of a crowd you can't see. But that clean picture is a lie of omission, and the part it quietly leaves out is exactly the part that reaches into your bank account. Because the textbook model assumes a fantasy. It assumes that the moment a price moves, everyone can respond instantly and freely. It assumes sellers can conjure more of anything overnight, and that buyers can always shrug, fold their arms, and walk away. Reality does not run that way. Reality runs on friction. Supply is frequently slow or stuck or flat out impossible to increase on command. You cannot build an apartment tower in an afternoon. You cannot grow a season's wheat in a week. You cannot train a surgeon over a long weekend. When more people suddenly want a thing that takes years to produce, the extra demand has nowhere to go, so it goes straight into the price. And demand can be trapped in exactly the same way because there are things you simply don't get to stop buying. This is the piece the clean model is silent about, and it's the piece that costs you. In 1973, a group of oil-producing nations cut off exports to the United States. Supply didn't drift downward gradually. It slammed shut. And watch what the tidy model completely fails to predict. The price of oil didn't rise politely toward some new resting point. It roughly quadrupled. It did that because the people who needed gasoline still needed gasoline the next morning. You cannot decide to stop driving to work because a cartel on the other side of the planet made a decision without you. When buyers physically can't back out, the entire weight of the imbalance drops onto one thing, the price, and it lands hard. That is the difference between wanting something and needing it, and the market charges you extra every single time for the difference. Economists have a dry word for how much your buying bends when the price moves. They call it elasticity, but you already understand it in your gut. When gas gets expensive, you still fill the tank because you have to. When steak gets expensive, you quietly switch to chicken. One of those is a need with nowhere to run. The other is a want with an exit. And the market can see which is which, and it prices you accordingly. So here's the colder question that opens up next. If needing something forces you to pay more for it, then who exactly is standing on the other side of that trade, deciding how much you're going to bleed? Here is the structural layer that almost nobody says out loud. Supply and demand is not settled by who wants the thing more. It's settled by who can afford to wait. In any transaction ever made, the person who can walk away, the one who doesn't need this particular deal to close today, is the one who sets the terms. The person who has to act now takes whatever the clock hands them. Patience is leverage, and leverage gets quietly priced into everything. Now think about where you usually stand in that arrangement, because this is where it stops being abstract and starts being your life. Your wages are a supply and demand market too. In fact, they're the single biggest one you'll ever participate in. Your labor is the supply. Employers are the demand. And the price of your work, your salary, is set by the exact same clearing mechanism that prices eggs and used cars and crude oil. When there are far more people who can do your job than there are open seats, the price of your work drops, and it drops no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you personally believe you're worth. That's not an insult. It's just the mechanism running its logic on you the same way it runs on everything else. And notice which side of the weight you're standing on when it does. Your rent is due on the first of the month. Your employer's rent is not due to you. In the negotiation over your paycheck, you are almost always the party who cannot afford to fold their arms and walk away. Which means you are almost always the party who takes the number the clock hands you. Seeing that clearly won't magically raise your salary overnight, but it tells you precisely what you're actually selling when you ask for more. Not effort, not loyalty, not the years you've put in. Scarcity. When you ask for a raise, the only argument the mechanism actually hears is that you've become harder to replace than the market currently believes you are. Everything else is noise. The real move, the min-maxer's move, is to make your particular combination of skills rarer. So the supply of people who can do what you do shrinks, and the price the market pays for it has nowhere to go but up. And once you understand that scarcity sets the price, you understand the oldest exploit in the entire game. Manufacture the scarcity on purpose. For most of the last century, a single company controlled the overwhelming majority of the world's diamond supply, and it made itself staggeringly rich, not by discovering more diamonds, but by very carefully never selling too many at once. It sat on the supply. It kept the shelves looking bare. Diamonds are not actually rare. The scarcity was a decision, maintained the way a game economy caps the number of a rare item that's allowed to exist, so that the ones already out there hold their value. You've paid a version of that tax without ever seeing it, every time a price was high, not because the thing was genuinely scarce, but because somebody profited from you believing that it was. So if scarcity can be manufactured and patience can be bought, then the comfortable story we all tell ourselves about prices, that they measure worth, starts to come apart in your hands. Here's what most people quietly believe: that a price reflects value, that the expensive thing is the better thing and the cheap thing is the lesser one, and that the market in its wisdom is telling you what stuff is really, truly worth. It is doing nothing of the kind. A price reflects exactly one thing: the balance of scarcity against need at the precise instant of the trade. Nothing about deserving, nothing about quality, nothing about fairness. Watch it happen in the open. During the pandemic, factories couldn't get the specialized chips that new cars require, so new cars suddenly got scarce. Buyers who needed a car to get to a job, to hold a life together, turned to the used market instead, and used car prices jumped by roughly 40%. Sit with that. People paid dramatically more for older cars, higher mileage cars, objectively worse cars, because the comforting logic of the better thing costs more was never the real logic underneath. The real logic was colder and simpler. You need a car. You need it now. You can't wait for the factories to catch up, so you pay. The winners in that moment were the people who happened to already own a car they could sell and didn't need to replace. The losers were the people who had to buy and couldn't wait. Same vehicle. Two completely different financial outcomes, decided entirely by which side of the weight you were standing on when the music stopped. That is the tax this mechanism collects, and it collects it in the currency of your purchasing power. Every single time you must buy a roof, a way to get to work, food on the table, and you can't substitute it or delay it, you pay the need premium. And every time you can wait or walk or swap one thing for another, you claw a little of that premium back. The gap between those two positions is small on any one purchase, but compounded across a lifetime of thousands of transactions, it becomes an enormous part of why two people who earn the exact same paycheck can end up in two completely different places. It was never only about how much came in. It was always also about which side of the weight they stood on when the money went back out. Now, step all the way back and look at the full map, because it is far bigger than any single purchase. Once you see prices as the resting point of scarcity pressed against need, the entire economy stops being a wall of random, hostile numbers and turns into something you can actually read. Rent is the price of a scarce place to stand in a market where new supply takes years to arrive. Wages are the price of labor that's either easy or hard to replace. And prices do something even stranger than measure that balance. They broadcast it. A high price is a signal flaring up that says, "We need more of this over here." And it pulls resources and effort toward the shortage without anyone in charge issuing an order. It's how millions of strangers who will never meet manage to coordinate what gets made. Even interest rates, which we'll come back to later in this series, are nothing more exotic than the price of money itself, set by how many people want to borrow it against how much there is to lend. It is all one mechanism. The same two crowds moving in opposite directions, meeting at a number, everywhere you turn your head. You have been living inside this system your entire life. You were just never handed the key that lets you watch the gears turn. If this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, the actual machinery underneath the money, with no hype, no predictions, and no one trying to sell you a portfolio, then subscribe to 8-Bit Economics. This is the first piece of a 5-part foundation. Over the next few episodes, we're going to lay in the other gears, one at a time. How incentives quietly steer every decision people make. How markets concentrate power in a few hands. How money and banking actually conjure the dollars you earn, and how governments lean on the whole apparatus. until you can watch your own money move through the entire system and read every step it takes. Like the video if it changed the way you see a price tag, and leave a comment with the exact moment something clicked into place. Because by the time everyone sees it coming, the smart play is already over. So the next time a number moves on you, the rent, the eggs, the used car that shouldn't cost what it costs, don't ask whether it's fair. Fairness was never the question the market was answering. Ask who's scarce, ask who can't afford to wait, and ask who is quietly counting on you to never learn the difference. The price was always a message. The only thing that just changed is that now you can read it.